Malcolm Bowden from the creation science movement is up next after this. Well, I thought it was after this. In fact, he's up now. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yes. Well, I've been listening to the discussions, and several times people have said, well, who made God? Well, as one of the speakers said, he is eternal, and he is actually outside of time. People get so thinking that the time scale that we are in at the moment, the sense of time that we have, will always exist. I don't think so at all. When God created the universe, he created time with it, but he is outside of time. So the idea of saying, well, who made God, implies that there was a time when God didn't exist. He has always existed, and because he is outside of time. That, to me, is a perfectly satisfactory explanation, an answer to the question, who made God? Because the question implies that there was a time when he didn't exist.
Well, I agree with that, and you agree with that, but we're not here to prove that this evening.
No, I agree.
Not the least because we can't prove it. We believe it. We have faith in it.
Right, yes, I agree.
But there are other things which creationists are associated with, which are quite clearly not true.
Give me an example.
Well, the age of the Earth, for one.
Well, can I say that I've been lecturing against evolution and for creation for virtually 40 years, and there is an answer to that age of the Earth. There are quite a number, dozens and dozens of ways of trying to get some idea of the age of the Earth. And the problem with it, as far as an evolution is concerned, is that they all give periods of about 1 or 2 million years, or a few more, down to just a few thousand, and therefore they're completely dismissed and ignored. And the only measure that they have that they will accept is what is known as radiometric dating, and that requires knowledge of the radioactivity, small parts of radioactivity inside the rocks. Now, they only use that because it is the only method that gives them answers in billions and millions of years. All the other methods are completely ignored.
But it does give them those answers.
Right. Can I finish?
Yeah.
There is a factor that the scientists do not want to take into account. It has been shown very, very clearly, certainly by creationists, and now many non-creationists are beginning to take it on board, that in the past the speed of light was very, very, very much faster than it is today. And that immediately affects all the radioactivity, and it makes the rocks very quickly look very old. And if you factor in bring in a factor to all these millions of years that allows for the increase in the speed of light as you go back in the past, it reduces all these millions of years down to just a few thousand years.
Well, that didn't persuade me in the slightest, Malcolm. I'm not sure if it persuaded anybody else out there. So let me ask you, how old do you say the Earth is?
If you go back to the Bible, it is about 6,000 years, and most creationists say it is something less than 10,000 years. Most what are called young Earth creationists, of whom I am one. And there are many, many of us.
Well, I mean, that, of course, doesn't square with any of the fossil evidence that we have. Doesn't square with the dinosaurs in the British Museum.
Well, yes, it does, because all those animals, you see, we look at the geological column when we see all the simple sea creatures at the bottom, and as you go up, you get amphibians, and then you get animals on the land, and then you get human beings right at the top. And everybody says, that's a sequence of evolution. But I do not consider it is. That is exactly the sequence of way in which animals would have been inundated at the time of the Great Flood. And that was to be all the small sea creatures would have been inundated first by all the material coming up from the interior of the earth. Then you get the fish, and then you get the amphibia halfway between land and sea. And then you get many of the animals that are on the smaller animals appear in the rock strata first. Then you get the larger, faster animals, and man would exist as long as he possibly could, swimming and clinging onto rocks and debris. and he would be at the top of the tree.
Do you believe that the story of Noah's Ark to be literally true?
Absolutely, because the evidence is there in the rocks. They are the result of all the animals being inundated, and that is the sequence that they would die in if there was an inundation over the whole land eventually.
How many days do you think it took God to make the earth and all within it?
6 days. You see, I wasn't there, you weren't there, nobody was there. But we do have a record from God in his word, and the truth of the Bible can be proved many, many times over.
Malcolm, as an earlier caller or texter put it, people like you give God a bad name. That's my point of view.